We back at it.
What's good? Episode whatever. Where we at? Episode 6?
Episode whatever. Yeah, we're at episode 6 right now. But yeah, let's go ahead and get to it, man. The All Star fucking Snubs.
Who is a snub at this point?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the Eastern Conference. And I want to save this little rant I got going on for the Western Conference a little later. But
okay.
I think we were talking. I got no problem really with who's on the Eastern Conference roster at all, even the reserve or even like the backups. If I had to make a nitpick at it, it'd probably be Ben Simmons. But then again, I don't see Ben Simmons in high regards as a lot of people do. A lot of motherfuckers put him in regards as that he's the next LeBron James without a jump shot. Stephen A. Smith be saying he's LeBron James 2.0 without a jumper. No, he's not. He's not LeBron James in any way, shape, or form.
I don't want to trash Ben Simmons, but I do want to temper expectation. I think everyone did assume he would be the next, LeBron James in a sense. I think he's more like a homeless man's Magic Johnson. Is that fair to say?
No.
That's not a poor man's Magic, a homeless man's Magic. Meaning he's a triple-double machine. He's an oversized point guard. Can't really shoot. Magic could shoot better than him, but is an athletic freak, and I think would be a good piece on a roster. I just don't feel like I wouldn't want to give my team the keys to Ben Simmons to be the point guard who can't shoot and is not dynamic scoring the ball like that. I would run that bitch through Joel Embiid 10 out of 10 times, but he's a homeless man's Magic. I stand by that comparison.
I don't think he's anywhere near Magic. I don't even think they're in the same realm. I think he's just a homeless man.
Comparing him to Magic's game, I think they play more similar than anybody else. No.
No, and I wouldn't say no because I think Magic could also post better than Ben can. I think Magic's probably a better passer than Ben.
That's why he's.
If there's anything, he's just more athletic. That's the only difference I'd say.
Which I think is why he's a homeless man's Magic. I'm not comparing him. I'm comparing his style of play to Magic, but I'm not comparing his player. Like he can't do the things that Magic. But I don't want to call him a bum. I think also too when we're talking about all stars, if you've made it there before, that's going to give you that push to make it there again. You know what I mean? Like.
Oh, well, that's why I'm saying I'm nitpicking
politics.
at this point. Yeah, I'm just nitpicking because there was snubs like Fred VanVleet. You could say was a snub, but. I don't know. I feel like in the East, if you really didn't make the All-Star team, you just didn't make the All-Star team. Like that's the Eastern Conference. I feel like everyone said is pretty weak. Yeah, there's been some upgrades like with the Nets and how Milwaukee looks. They look nice here and there, but that's about it. I feel like if you're talented enough, you should make the All-Star team in the Eastern Conference. But what the hell do I know? I've never played in the NBA, so.
I thought you did. I thought you had a stint with the Rockets. I mean, you could go and give a 10-piece to the Pelicans, no?
And probably a game, just one game.
One game. You could drop 10.
Probably.
If Ahmad Rashad can score in a preseason game, you could go give 10 points to a team.
I'm cool with Julius Randle being there. I mean, he's actually leading the Knicks to having a decent season this year.
He is having a really good season, actually. I think he's blossomed into do Laker fans wish that he was still there or even on the Pelicans? Like, I think he's turned into a hell of a player down in New York.
I would think him and Zion would be a nice little
1-2 punch.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad one right there. The way he's developed his game now, he could shoot a lot better. He's more in shape than when he was with LA. Obviously, I think he had to learn that over time, how to take care of his body and whatnot. But he was always physically gifted ever since he was in college.
Right.
We're talking about Zach Randolph, not Zach Randolph.
Yeah, he's got a little Zach Randolph in him, though.
Well, that's one of the comparisons he was. He was a lefty. I think even Kobe compared him to Zach Randolph's body with Lamar Odom's skill, is where he could come up and down the court, and he could he has the girth and the physique to play down in the post.
That
Um,
that's
at
a
it at all. He really improved his game a lot, I'd say, since he's been with New York.
I think you bring that up. I think one thing that in this era of basketball and sports in general is how young these kids are coming out now, and there's such an expectation to be so good out the gate, even with Zion. If 5 games into his career, you know what I mean, like people are going to have these crazy expectations, and so the fact that these 20, 21, 22 year olds. It took Julius Randle a few years to really get it, for things to click, for his body to catch up to, or for his mind to catch up to his athletic ability, or for him to fill out and develop different parts of his game. So I don't know exactly how old he is now, but uh, you know, it's sort of like in football where you used to have quarterbacks sit for the first couple of years and then they'd come in and take over. Now you're thrust in, off rip, and then if you can't cut it, they're just on to the next one. And so I think it doesn't allow players who do need that time to grow. It doesn't allow them to actually blossom and then situational wise too, if you have to compete for touches and stuff like that. So I think Julius Randle is a good example of figuring it out on a different team, and then he chased the bag a little bit, and now he's cooking. He's deserving of this All-Star bid for sure.
No, for sure. At this list too, I mean, I'm not surprised with Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. I think that was going to happen eventually. Both great players, both young, and Jason Tatum. I think what is this, his second All-Star game, and Jaylen Brown's first. So I have nothing to say about that. That I think that was a given. The surprise, like no surprises there with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. Honestly, being on there, I think you're going to get your box office players that are going to make it. Giannis, he does Giannis things. I mean, 2-time MVP, so obviously, and he's not hurt. There's no injuries. He's still putting up his numbers, so there's no reason why he shouldn't be in the All-Star game this year. And Joel Embiid, I mean, I think that he's been speaking for himself. He's an MVP candidate. I got nothing to say against there, but Bradley Beal. Also, too, I guess if I had to nitpick again, on a really horrible team, but like I was telling you off camera, I don't think there's ever been an All-Star game where at least the top 5, maybe 4 scorers of the league are not in the All-Star game. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I can't see the league not having their premier scorers not in these All-Star games to put up the numbers that they want to see for the game. I mean, we've noticed that they don't play defense. They really don't. They let the scorers be scorers, let the All-Stars be All-Stars, and let them do their thing, just run up and down the court and try to dunk, shoot threes, and that's really it. So if you had a nitpick, you could say that, but since he is leading the league in scoring, I can see why they put him in there.
Are you nitpicking him being an All-Star or an All-Star starter?
I guess both.
Because for me, I don't know how you don't make him an All-Star, albeit he is on a bad team, putting up ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, for sure.
I think if you do watch some Bradley Beal, similar to Devin Booker, the dude's a bucket, and he has no help. I can't imagine it'd be extremely fun, or what's another way to put it? It wouldn't be extremely. Not a lot of potential playing with Russell Westbrook as your one. We've seen he can't necessarily lead a team to a championship. He's more focused. I don't want to hate on Russell. Russell, if you're watching this, don't think I'm coming at you, but I want a point guard. Yeah, I want a point guard who runs the show, is a leader, is a floor general, and is not hunting for stats, is not being selfish, and does not have an inefficient shooting method where, watching Russell Westbrook through the years, especially it used to be like with Kevin Durant, he would come down. I think the best play I've ever seen Westbrook make was he came down on a break. KD's behind him. He actually dumped it back. KD hits a 3, which should be commonplace for point guards. You have a top 3 scorer of all time on your team, give him the pill. But Westbrook, he wants his stats. And so, Bradley having to share the ball with him is tough. But if you watch Bradley Beal play, the dude is one of the best scorers in the league. And when you bring up about scorers who don't make All-Star teams. Bradley's been snubbed before. I think Monte Ellis maybe comes to mind, where he put up a pretty high clip but never really made an All-Star team. Fact check me in the comments, but I think Bradley Beal is well deserving of being an All-Star off rip, but I think he does deserve to start. Who would start over him? Who do you think should start over him on that list? Let me pull that up.
I mean, you could argue James Harden. His whole game but he completely changed his whole game, but he's still averaging 25. Like that team, granted, that team's just a ridiculous juggernaut of a team, but you could argue James Harden.
Does it knock him at all that he's playing with a big three?
You just argue James Harden, in my opinion.
But like, does it? Because Kyrie's starting, so should both of them be starting in the backcourt, or should it be James? So I mean, you would probably put James and Kyrie over a combo of him and one of them and Bradley Beal.
Well, Kyrie's even came out and said he played the 2, so you could put Kyrie at the 2, where Beal is at. And then you put Harden at the 1, which that's a whole different conversation. But
and that. What do you think of that? Let's go there real quick.
What do I think about what?
About Kyrie Irving announcing that he's a 2.
I mean, I think he's always been a 2. I never thought, even in high school or college, I never thought he was a 1. Just because I think the stigma that we put on point guards because they're small and are taught to bring the ball up, they're automatically the point guard. No, I don't think that. I think maybe just because I'm old school, I think you too. You like your point guard to run the show and not really necessarily look for his bucket, but if it comes, it comes, and if he's there, he's there, and if he's on, he's on. Those are those days. But I think you're the same way as I kind of think sometimes. You want your point guard to facilitate, create plays, and get people involved. So I don't think that's not Kyrie. Kyrie's always been dynamic as a scorer. I think we've agreed on this. Like, he's probably the most versatile. I mean, and I think everyone agreed on this. He's probably the most versatile scorer in the paint as far as how he's able to finish, switch his hands midair, be able to reverse mid change with his hands. Put the right spin on the ball when he's like falling way deep in order to get that little touch off the glass. So I think he's always been a 2, even with Cleveland, because he wasn't a leader, and your point guard does need to be a leader. He wasn't a leader in Cleveland. We clearly saw he wasn't a leader in Boston, and last year with Brooklyn, we saw he wasn't really a leader. Now the stuff off the court, that's different. You want to be an activist and all of that, I'm all for it, but that's a different kind of leadership, I think. But we're just talking basketball. So him being a basketball leader, I don't see that. And granted, there's multiple ways you can lead, but I just don't think he's a leader. Now, James Harden, you could make the argument he's not necessarily a leader, and I would agree he's not a leader. I think the leader of that team is KD, even though a lot of people think he's a beta. But I still think him being the only one there with multiple championship experience, and just him being the gift of God that he is, pause. I think that's people going to defer to him somewhat. But James Harden is the better playmaker and the better passer. So I could see that being why he's always been fitting to be the point guard. Even at ASU, I went to a few games. Yeah, he scored the ball, he led them in scoring, but he was also more of a playmaker. Like, he got a lot of people involved, like Ty Abbott. Abbott, I think, their second or third leading scorer. And, nothing against Ty, but
good player.
No, yeah, for sure. Played against him in high school.
Yeah.
But, it just is what it is. James Harden is just a better playmaker and gets a lot of people involved and still gets his point. So I could see him taking that sacrifice. I didn't think it was going to work, but it did. It is. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think
– opinion on that.
Right. Do you think where did things go wrong? I don't want to say wrong, but where did things kind of go off the rails where Harden became just a dribble god? He had the ball in his hands so much to just operate almost 100% of the offense in Houston, because like you said, he does have a natural kind of ability to make plays. But we, from what he's been doing with the scoring, from a scoring standpoint, the last few years, I think most people, and even me, like the casual fan, would be thinking that he's just a scorer, but in retrospect, he actually makes a lot of plays for his teammates. Now, the stats will be backed up by him having the ball in his hands so much, the player usage. And so obviously when you draw double teams or you're so, offensively gifted, you're going to be able to have more opportunity to get assists. But I think him stepping into that more playmaking role in the Nets, and I don't want to even say sacrificing because it might be just more naturally fitting. He's got goons around him now that, like you said, with Kevin Durant, whether he's an alpha or a beta, that dude's skill speaks for itself. So I think, him being surrounded by guys who can fill it up like that is a really unique big three in a sense that now I would liken, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'd liken Kyrie almost more to like an Allen Iverson type. Looks for his points first. Not saying he can't create, but he's an undersized shooting guard who's thrust into a point guard role, but is basically a better scorer than anything else that he can do. And now James Harden kind of fills that Aaron McKee role. Now we're talking throwback, that Eric Snow. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I think if they can fix some stuff defensively, we'll see how far they can go this year.
No, yeah, for sure. But to answer your original question, where I think it went wrong,
yeah,
probably OKC.
I mean, he didn't have a huge role. He had to be a scoring threat off the bench too, right?
No, for sure. And but people forget they put that big three with Harden, Durant, and Westbrook in crunch time. And I think that's where his playmaking actually developed even more because he was the third option when they all three were there. So I can also see why this role is a little bit easier for him to adapt to and still get his points because he did have to take a backseat to those two.
That's a good point.
But the reason I say it probably went wrong because he was willing to stay from what we heard as far as the media would announce is that he wanted to stay. They just didn't want to pay him the money to stay. And everyone says, I think it was extra $4 or $5 million that they could have easily gave to him and probably won a championship again with that team. I think that was it. And then he wanted to prove to everyone, I think, why he deserved at least that extra $5, and he proved it.
Yeah.
He sure proved it to the world why he's worth almost $500 million. But yeah, I think that probably where it kind of started, and then his transition to Houston, where at that time Houston really didn't have anybody. I would say, I mean, maybe Lowry, and I can't even remember who else was really on those teams. But James Harden did turn that Houston franchise around once that happened because he was let loose. He was able to be kind of whatever scorer or point guard he wanted to be. And I would say that's where it kind of went wrong because then, as we saw, he wasn't able to handle dealing with the second player at all. He wasn't really able to handle that teamwork at all. So I would say OKC had to been it.
Well, and also too, I was just kind of he was so ball dominant in Houston, but you could see how he could sort of take a backseat in OKC because he's got two, bona fide stars next to him. And so he's been able to play his role. He was let loose. He let all the strippers know in Houston how much money he made. And so now he could kind of just slide into just, playing his game with his friends. And I think the point guard role does suit him when we're talking about what we identify in a point guard, that facilitator, that floor general. I don't want my point guard to be scoring minded, so to speak, but I don't want him not to be able to score the ball. I don't want Chucky Atkins. No offense, Chucky. Like Jamal Tinsley, like those kinds of guys, some old head throwbacks. I want like a Kevin Johnson, a dude who can fill it up, but is a pass first floor general. And so if James Harden can obviously score the ball, we all know that in this era, he did the 7-foot step back, like he's a bucket. So if he can he'll get his on occasion, but like when you're surrounded by Kyrie, who's a scoring specialist, unlike Russell Westbrook, and then Kevin Durant, who looks like he hasn't skipped a beat since that injury.
For sure.
Again, I think what is their kryptonite? Is it defense? Like what's stopping the Nets? Other than maybe some chemistry, just this being their first year from winning a championship this year.
Man, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, because I'm really surprised, to be honest with you, granted, I don't know none of these people personally, but like they're just with portraying the media, Kyrie's attitude. I'm surprised that hasn't been a thing. And maybe they've all talked about it, or maybe they keep all that shit off camera or not the media. But like I'm surprised. But I would say maybe Kyrie's attitude, if anything, later on, like when things start to get like closer to the playoffs and stuff like that, or deep into the playoffs, hopefully that doesn't play a role. But that's probably the only thing I can see. I think a lot of what they do offensively and just physically, I think they could get by with a lot of some of the defensive assignments. They could get by off of that.
Right. I think defensively is going to be the big key. And I don't have the metric in front of me, but I mean, last I looked, they're tops of the league, in scoring, in ability to put up points, and then they're at the bottom of the league giving up points.
For sure.
And not that they can't play defense, but I do think it's that when you're so offensive oriented, and to be honest, if there was a team or a big three that, man, we're just going to outshoot you, we're just going to outgun you, we're going to outscore you, it would be these guys. Like, they literally are three of the most lethal scorers on the planet. And so maybe they don't have to really play deep, but when in the playoffs, when it's a tighter ball game, it's a slower pace, when there's game plans in a 7-game series where now you have adjustments made by the other team to key on, there's just it's a different game. It's called differently too. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they can adapt. And like you talked about Kyrie, was it in Cleveland where he like wouldn't even talk to anybody like during the playoffs? Like he literally would he wouldn't talk to anybody, but then during the game he can step, when you get inside the lines, he could do his thing. But I don't know how that'll work. Maybe it is different, like you said. He is friends with Kevin Durant, he is friends with James, I would assume. And so when you're surrounded by friends in a situation you want to be in, maybe it's a little different. If me and you were playing on a team, I might act a little different than if I'm playing with a bunch of scrubs from Red Mountain Rec. So yeah, I would like to think that they could figure that out. And at least KD, if you're gonna play second fiddle to anybody, by the way, and Kyrie had to play second fiddle to LeBron and the circus that he brings, good or bad, it's being second fiddle to Kevin Durant is fine in my book. You know what I mean? Sure. Like that's one dude I could be like, hey, here's the keys, my man. You are the best scorer in the league. I'll be number 2. You know what I mean? If you ain't first, you're second in that regard. So I think, but I think defensively, it does scare me a little bit because we all know, I'm not saying James Harden's the worst defender in the league, but we've seen the lapses when he's not locked in. In the playoffs, you can't necessarily get away with that against the cream of the crop.
No, for sure. I totally agree. And to go back to your point of their scoring, Durant is 29 points per game, Kyrie is 27, and Harden is 25.
Harden's still 25? God damn.
Yeah. So, and just from the outside looking in, I don't recall ever there being 3 like top leaders in the 25 up range of scoring. Like Golden State, when they had the 3, their big 3, they were all just 2, I think 26, 25, and 21.
Draymond was 21.
Who? Draymond?
Was Iguodala their big 3?
No, Clay was a.
No, Clay, Steph, and who?
I'm sorry.
My bad. My internet said it was unstable. You said the big 3 of the Warriors?
Yeah.
Who's the big 3 in the Warriors?
No, not now. I'm talking about when Durant was there.
Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking like, Draymond's not putting up 21 a game.
No.
All right, technical difficulties there, folks. Hang with us.
No, it's like when Durant was there, it was like 26, 25, and 21, which was still very impressive, but nothing like this. This is a whole nother, let's say, 15-point gap between that team.
That's really crazy to think about, to be honest.
No, for sure. So I think, like, and not to mention, you have a D'Antoni really ran system in this team. It's not Steve Nash's system. It's really D'Antoni's system. So I would say this is more of a souped up Suns in a sense, where they're running and gunning. and the scores are going to be scores. But they don't really have. I don't think they have an enforcer. I think they did before they traded those pieces to Cleveland and to Indiana and to Houston. They had some pieces there that were kind of somewhat enforcers or like they kept you going. Because DeAndre Jordan, I don't think he'll make that much of an impact as far as like, because that's the reason he's there is to make a defensive impact. But who knows if he will? Who knows if he won't? So we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. I think if there is hope, we might see another KD LeBron matchup. But that's also too if the Lakers can get past Utah or the Clippers.
Yeah, my bad. Is my mic working still?
Yeah, mine still sounds nice. Pause.
All right. No, yeah, I think they should have. If anything, they should have kept Jared Allen. I really like what he brings defensively from a shot blocking standpoint. Yeah, DeAndre might be a little over the hump or over the hill, but they do have so much firepower. It would literally be like Isaiah Thomas, Clyde Drexler, and Charles Barkley, or Karl Malone all getting on the same team or something. It feels weird to have 3 25 points per game players on one team, and then still surrounded by like Joe Harris, Jeff Green, dudes who can still kind of put the ball in the cup a little bit, like who should maybe be starting on some other teams or have good roles. But it'll be interesting to see how they mesh and how, like you said, is Kyrie kind of the X factor and like mentally how he's going to get through later in the playoffs. I think the whole saga with him just kind of disappearing and doing some mental, checkup for himself, hanging with family and whatnot. I think it's a little unprecedented in the history of the game. I've never really heard of someone just like not showing up because, but when you're that talented, I guess in this era, you can just choose not to be there when you don't want to, but who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Because with this kind of firepower and the kind of egos or lack thereof, or just the celebrity status of all three of these players, it's going to be interesting to see how they all gel, later in the year, because the year's a grind. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. I mean, hell, for 30-game season's a grind. I can just imagine an NBA season.
Yeah.
But to add your point on it real quick, there has been a player that has left due to mental issues, and that was Derrick Rose. When he was with New York, he just kind of dipped off, and the same when he was with Cleveland, he just kind of dipped off.
Well, okay, but that's also not a dude making 100 mil. But I get your point, and also like Kevin Love dealt with some issues. But yeah, and also too, Derrick Rose had some catastrophic. I mean, also too, when you have a birth in the family or you have a major injury or something going on, but Kyrie kind of just like upped and dipped, like like the media was reporting like, no, Steve Nash hasn't talked to him at all. Like at the very least, like have an excused absence. Don't just leave and then all of a sudden on social media you're trending because you're at like your sister's birthday party or something like that. It was a weird situation, you know what I mean? And so, but that's what comes with Kyrie. He's sort of an enigmatic. Doesn't he believe the earth is flat? Like I wouldn't put past anything with Kyrie, but like you talked about leadership as a point guard, and we're talking basketball. That's off the court, but you do have to be able to communicate with your teammates.
No, for sure, yeah.
So I don't know how I could take Kyrie as a leader if you see all the chaos that he brings in, in his own right, especially let alone trying to help your teammates be better. And I'm not saying he's not a good teammate, but let's communicate better, my man, Kyrie.
No, for sure. Oh shit, Mike Conley cut his dreads off.
Trying to make an All-Star game. he ain't making shit.
That's a little tangent there, but was that Mike Conley? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Thought he had dreads like just 2 days ago. Yeah. So I think we kind of stand the same boat as far as like where we think the Nets. Oh wait, hold on. Where do you think the Nets will be? Do you think they'll be in the championship? I think they will. Well, I don't think that Boston or Milwaukee's gonna do anything.
See, I think Philly will either. I think Milwaukee is interesting because
again,
because Drew Holiday I think is a difference maker if he can stay healthy. Like I do think like Giannis can. I don't know. I think that'll be an interesting 7-game series. I don't think the 76ers are a real threat. And I don't think Boston is either. I just think they would get just outgunned. But I don't know. I like Milwaukee. I think Giannis in the playoffs, if they can just figure it out. And I just don't see the Nets being defensively good enough to stop Giannis. I don't know. I think that's just thing. But I do see maybe the Nets going to the championship, and then
they're gonna stop Giannis.
How would they stop Giannis?
The same way the Heat or whoever beat them last year in the bubble did. Whoever beat the last 2 years in the playoffs. Let that fool just shoot threes. He's gonna do that.
But I think
he's open threes. He's not gonna.
He could he can get in the lane against these guys though. Like, I mean,
too.
I'm saying because I don't think the Nets play good on-ball defense. I don't think they're cut from that cloth. And I don't see
Kevin Durant does.
But so is Kevin Durant going to have to guard Giannis 48 minutes? Like, because I think, and that's usually not.
I'm assuming he's going to have to. Because who else is going to guard him? DeAndre Jordan can't guard him.
I think you're going to throw Jeff Green on him, and I don't think Jeff Green can guard Giannis. No offense.
Nah, we've seen Kevin Durant take the initiative to guard LeBron in the playoffs. So I don't see why he wouldn't in this instant.
And maybe he does. I don't even know if Kevin Durant can straight up guard Giannis. Because Giannis is stronger than Kevin Durant. But I do, and maybe Kevin Durant can do that, and then because he's got the horses to now not have to score 40 a game, so technically he could focus on D. No, it'll be interesting, and they probably, I could see that kind of going. I don't know. I think Milwaukee might be. Maybe I'm crazy for that. Tell me if I'm crazy for thinking Milwaukee has a chance. I don't think anyone from the East is actually going to win it. I think it's going to be the Clippers. Maybe I'm crazy for that take too, but if Anthony Davis, if he's not 100%, or if he's not at least, getting there, and if the Lakers don't make a move, which, says a lot about them having to make a move to be, competitive, because again, it's all picked and choose for LeBron. So, I see a Clippers Nets or Lakers Nets finals, or like I said, if Milwaukee can figure it out and build chemistry. Again, the regular season is just regular season. A lot of things are worked out. The teams in the East know that they're going to get to the playoffs anyways. It's not like they're competing for playoff spots.
No, for sure. But to your point, Kevin Durant's 240, Giannis is 242. I mean,
but it's distributed way differently throughout their bodies. I mean, KD must be packing that thing or something, because I don't see 240. Pause. I don't see 240. He's got no meat on his bones, so I
don't see that either. There's somewhere, I don't know how he's 240. I've always thought he was still like 230, maybe, but no, he's 240. But that's neither here nor there. But okay, so that's where you see the Nets. You probably see them maybe if they get past Milwaukee. Okay.
I mean, like I said, I think the Nets have so much firepower that I can envision them beating almost anybody, but I also can envision them not beating anybody, because if they get cold and they just can't defend like other teams, because their team is just so offensive heavy. If all it takes is kind of one mismatch or a team to kind of figure out like, oh shoot, we can score this way on them, and then are they just going to try to D'Antoni and like outgun you? And again, if there's a team built to do that, it's probably this team. But it's in the playoffs, certain things happen. It can get special, and like if a team figures out or gets hot at the right time, like the Heat did last year, it'll be interesting to see. But where do you see them finishing this year?
I do see them going to the finals. Against who? I don't know. My West is all up in the air right now, but I do see them in the finals.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to argue. Is it championship or bust for them, do you think? Or are you giving them more than 1 year to kind of figure it out?
Oh, no, I ain't giving them shit. I think if they don't win this year, then, it is what it is. But the only reason I'm not giving them anything is because Kevin Durant, and you can't say Kevin Durant just came off a 2. He's back like nothing happened. Kyrie, he's going to put his numbers up. the James. So now it'd be different if they didn't get this James Harden deal to go through. Now that changed the whole game for me. And I'm like, now they have to win. Like,
Right.
they're all because all three of them are looking for a difference as far as their legacy goes. Like, granted, they're in another big three, but AD's trying to run from the stigma of him having to go to a 72 and 9 win, a 73 and 9 win team, and win 2 back-to-back championships because of that. Kyrie's still trying to get out of that shadow of LeBron and show that he was a big part to that team more than he's given credit. Because let's be fair, I mean, a lot of people really just consider like LeBron still did it on his own. A lot of people would say that. But no, he had Kyrie and he had Kevin Love. He did have help on those teams that went to the finals multiple times with the Cavaliers, and Kyrie was a huge part to that. Hell, they say if Kyrie didn't get hurt in the first championship the Warriors had without Durant, they probably win that. That'd be their Cleveland's first win. They'd probably be back-to-back champs.
You can argue that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, Kyrie was a big part to that, and he probably wants to get redemption. He wants to show that he was worth whatever happened. Like, he was part of that championship too. And James Harden's looking for his first one. You know, he probably wants to get over that stigma that he can't get over the hump. So they all got something to prove, and this is literally, in my opinion, the year they need to prove it. I don't see why not now. I mean, especially with LeBron having his 4th title. Whether or not I think that 4th title is a sham, he still has 4 titles. So I think that is playing a heap to all of, at least Kyrie and Durant, is playing something to them mentally that they want to be able to face them for sure and beat them. So I think that they need to win this year if they want to revamp their legacy to be different than what it is.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think just like when LeBron joined Miami, and they self-proclaimed we're not going to win 1, 2, 3, 4. They said they were going to win multiple championships. We don't hear that necessarily out of Brooklyn, but yeah, it would be unreasonable to think that it's not championship or bust when you put 3 of the top scorers in the entire league on one team in an East that seems to not have a front runner. It's them. And so, yeah, I think chemistry wise, and I think they need to get to the finals this year, but it's sort of like Kawhi and Paul George. They didn't even get to the finals, but I don't know if they need to necessarily win it, but they need to show that this big 3 can cohesively work together, get to the finals. If they run into a Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets, whoever ends up getting there and they lose, then they can have an off season to put some pieces around them to, plug the holes defensively, or maybe, get another big man or something of that nature. But if they don't win a championship at all in Brooklyn, I mean, this is a massive failure. I don't understand how they don't at least win 1 championship while they have this big 3.
No, for sure. I totally agree. I think that they need to. I mean, the whole experience, I think this is part of that outcome with Joe Johnson, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Darren Williams, that whole outcome from that, I think all that's starting to finally come into play with the Brooklyn Nets wanted now. And right now is the time. This is the time. This is kind of what they were putting all their chips in for all that shit back then for now. So We'll see. I mean, I hope they do. But it's an unpopular opinion, but Kevin Durant's still one of my favorite players. I think his game is just crazy. Whether or not he chased 2 rings, I'm not going to hold him against that, because no one holds LeBron's against him, whether or not LeBron was somewhat of the main vocal point of those teams. He still, joined a really great team and a great leadership with Pat Riley there. So if people don't hold that against LeBron, I'm not going to hold it too much against Durant. As far as the era of basketball is played today,
I do hold it against both of them, but yeah, I agree.
Oh no, I don't know what I'm saying, but that's why I'm just gonna still say Durant's game is still iconic in a sense that he took it past to where other Tracy and Durant and Dirk were. He took it past that in a point where he just so efficient and so unstoppable. It's just crazy to not admire that. But yeah, I think I went on a tangent of just
No,
Durant scoring.
yeah, I would love to see Tracy McGrady get traded to the Spurs for Manu Ginobili and 4 players, and then him, Tony Parker, and Tim Duncan. See how many championships they can win. But see, that wasn't the era back then.
Oh
So
yeah,
I do hold it against all these players of this era in the sense that you're playing with all these other bona fide superstars. Because now I get that if one team does it, and I mean the Warriors organically created this powerhouse, and then LeBron goes. Um, and he has to continue to form big threes. So no one else has a chance, which I think hurts the game, the NBA, the brand of basketball. And then the Warriors start to crumble a little bit. That couldn't last forever. But now everyone has, these big threes or at least duos. And if you don't have a big three, you have zero chance of winning a championship. And so I do personally hold it against certain players in regards to comparisons throughout the history of basketball. But in this era, you pound for pound, if we're talking just the individuals, probably have extreme respect for Kevin Durant's ability to play the game.
oh for sure, yeah.
And so if he does win, I mean, it'll add to the legacy, and it will get a little bit of sour taste out of my mouth for him joining the Warriors after they just should have beat them when he was in OKC. But no, this was a good discussion about the Nets, because I think it's this is an unprecedented time with this amount of firepower on a team in this era.
Oh no, for sure. So do you want to get into the Western Conference real quick?
Yeah, we can get into that. We're about at the 40-minute mark.
All right, so it shouldn't take too long. I just got to say to you motherfuckers out there, what makes you think Devin Booker deserves to be an all-star? I just don't see it. He is definitely a two-time reserve player. Damian Lillard was hurt last year, so they just gave him a pity, threw him in there. And this year, Anthony Davis, same thing. And I think that, this is a coaches and fans vote to usually get the players in, and they didn't want Booker in to begin with. I think a lot of people were, backing him up and wanted him in there as far as like LeBron and other certain people, but I don't think he is. A lot of you could make an argument that he should be, because there are two other individuals with definitely identical stats, which being Donovan Mitchell and Paul George. And I can see why you would think, well, why the hell is Paul George in there? Look it. I don't agree to this bubble shit last year. I get that we wanted to have the bubbles to see games and stuff, but look at all the players in the bubble last year and look at them this year. Not that those teams that were somewhat respectable as far as Miami, they're not doing shit this year. A lot of players on that Miami team are just there at this point. Yeah, the Suns went 8-0. That doesn't mean anything. That bubble, in my opinion, didn't prove anything to nobody. And my reason being, Chris Paul was, I think, the main reason this is even happening today. Chris Paul is the reason the Suns are in 4th place, I think it is. If not 4th or 5th, I'm not 100% sure, but he's the reason why. I think not Paul Pierce, Chris Paul. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I filled in the blanks.
And I mean, he's proven last year when he was with OKC that he could take a somewhat mediocre team and get him to the playoffs and take that that team to 7 games. He proved that, and he's proven it over time too. When he was with New Orleans, when they were the Hornets back in the day, he took them to the playoffs and made them a contender. And then when he came into Houston, you could say James Harden was one of the reasons that, that they were able to do that. But no, I think it was Chris Paul. If Chris Paul didn't hurt his hamstring in that series against Golden State, I think we're talking a whole different series. And this is the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors team.
Yeah, I think that would have created a ripple effect. We wouldn't have the Nets as we have it right now if he doesn't get hurt.
For sure. And I think, and Chris Paul, we don't talk about it enough, but I think Chris Paul should be mentioned in that same realm as LeBron James, where someone who takes care of their body just as well. He may not be the freak of nature specimen LeBron is, but Chris Paul is 16 years in this league, and he's able to do the things that he's able to do. I mean, and he's putting up, and he's remained consistent. He hasn't taken a fall at all. He's remained consistent, and he's taken teams that are mediocre to the playoffs. The Suns were never in this position at all in the past since Steve Nash was there. So I think that that's a detriment to Chris Paul, not a detriment to Devin Booker. And I know y'all going to give me shit for this. That's fine. I don't really care. But yeah, I just got to let y'all know I got to stir the punch bowl a little bit and say that Devin Booker, yeah, he could score a lot of points. But like me and you've said before, Cave, that I think that all comes into today's game. Yeah, it's a run and gun league. A lot of people are shooting. A lot of people put a lot of 50-point games. I mean, hell, Dame Lillard put up multiple 50 points in the bubble. So did Jamal Murray. And you could even, I feel like you could make an argument that Jamal Murray could be an all-star too.
Right.
His numbers are a little less. He's 21 a game. Devin Booker's 24. But you could make an argument. Denver is the higher seed. And the reason I'd say Paul George is because his team is second in the league. Granted, it's probably to Kawhi, a majority of it, as far as like, you know, putting in the effort and trying to get these games in. But Paul George has to put in some effort too. And Donovan Mitchell, his team's the first in the league. So the dude, you have to have these players in the league, in the All-Star game. Devin Booker, like I said, you can make the argument. I just don't see it. And I haven't seen it really in his game. He just seems to be someone who just puts up a bunch of numbers. And he had to make his team better, in my opinion. And Chris Paul did that.
Well, I'll say, so you're basically saying Devin Booker is a product of Chris Paul being there, which is getting him over the hump into the All-Star recognition.
Today.
Yeah, today.
I think there was just so much backlash for him not being an All-Star. Then he got lucky that Dame was hurt.
Or Anthony Davis got hurt.
Because it's a fan and a coach's vote. They didn't vote him in, so they must not have think he was really worthy to be in my opinion.
Well, and from a stats standpoint, I mean, he puts up about 20 shots a game, and he shoots, about 6 to 7 threes a game. He's averaging about 6 threes a game. And so when you're the number one option scoring wise on your team, you know, it's in this era, you're going to put up 24, 26 points a game. We've seen that with a lot of players throughout the years. And so, you know, I think Devin Booker's worthy of being an all-star, but when you're talking about, you know, over like Paul George or, just a plethora of players there's a lot of good players in the way. Like, again, you can make the argument Jamal Murray, like you said, so I think Chris Paul, you know, everywhere he's gone, he's been a point guard who does make his teammates better, whether he's a great teammate or not. Again, he's sort of an alpha, from people, what they say. But yeah, he makes dudes better. He gets people better numbers. You know, you saw what he did with Lob City. And so I think Devin Booker's, thriving. I agree a little bit with, he's thriving more so because of Chris Paul, but you can't throw him in just like he's an automatic surefire bid for All-Stars. I think getting in now because of the injuries, just, you know, by default, so to speak, will help him later though with the politics of the game. So he's got one notch on his belt. I think eventually if he has next year he puts up 27 a game, it's going to be hard to say he's not worthy next year. You know what I mean? So I think this is good for Devin Booker in the long run, but I don't know if he's 100% deserving over some of these other guys. It's an interesting point. And since we're both from Arizona, we see more of Devin Booker than a lot of people. So if he ever comes to my gym, I'm gonna throw a triple team at him and let him bitch at me. Come down to Greenfield LA Fitness, you know, that's what we're doing out here. We're throwing double teams at you, Devin. We're gonna get you better, all right?
No, for sure. And like I said, I mean, nothing really against Devin. I just don't think that he's really fully deserving of these two All-Stars that he had. Like I said, you could make the argument. I just don't see it. I think that you have to be able to make your team better. I'm not saying he's not a big part of why the Suns are what they are, but he's second. compared to what and I don't care if he's leading the team in scoring. Chris Paul is the main reason that this is happening. If it wasn't for Chris Paul, they wouldn't be 4 or 5 in the league in the West right now. And that's obvious. The Suns were trash. And don't give me this bubble shit. Just please don't. That doesn't mean anything. Because look at a bunch of the teams that did play in the bubble, and they're way better this year from having a longer season. Look at the Clippers. Clippers are definitely having a way better season than what they were in the bubble. Utah is having a way better season than what they were in the bubble. Miami is having a trash season than what they were in the bubble. So I think the good teams are more prepared. People picked up pieces like the Suns that they needed to fill a void that they never had since Steve Nash was there. And that's obvious. This is the first time that they have an actual point guard that's not just a runner gun. He's actually a floor general, and he's actually leading these young kids to becoming better players. So like I said, you could make the argument. I'm making the argument that he shouldn't be there. But you know, some of you Devin Booker fans are going to trash me for it, but that's fine. It is what it is.
And I want to see it. Trash him in the comments. Come after him in the comments and tell him why Devin Booker is so damn good at basketball. I would love to see that. I would love to. But no, that's a good point to end on. Devin Booker is definitely a good player. You're not saying that at all.
Oh yeah.
You're just saying Chris Paul is more the guy, and there's a reason why.
I think more of the deserving All-Star player on this team. Like I said, you can make the argument. Like I said, him, Paul George, and Donovan Mitchell are basically all have similar numbers this year. But the other two are on winning teams. I think Donovan Mitchell's for sure a big part of why his team's winning, and Paul George is the other half of why his team's winning.
And I don't like to look just to analytics as to why a player should make an all-star team or not. And just like you're doing, like if you're gonna choose a player for your team between Paul George and Devin Booker, you're taking Paul George. Like, I don't think anyone's debating that, and they're nothing to take away from Devin Booker. But it's not sometimes always about how many points you score. It is about what else you do or how you affect your team. And so, yeah, I think, good for Devin. Trash him in the comments, though. If, if you think that Devin Booker is deserving and he's the best player on the planet, because I've heard that, he's the next Kobe. That's what I've heard.
And to shout out Jalen Rose, he said on Twitter, again, don't say who got snubbed without saying who they should replace. I said, you can make the argument for those two players, but those other guards, nah.
No way.
He's not over Dame. He's not over Curry. He's not over LeBron. He's just not. And like I said, just those are the only two players you could probably make an argument for. And if we were to take Biggs out, I'm all fine with that. Hell, he's better than Gobert.
Mm-hmm. Gobert.
Better than the big. I'd put him over Zion but they want Zion to like for the highlight show. So I'm not saying Devin Booker isn't worthy if they're like for the guard position. I'm not saying he's not worthy to be an all-star. I'm just saying I don't think he's worthy of the last two all-stars if he is the last reserve to be in. And like I said, you can make the argument. Again, there's two other similar players, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, I sort of agree. Trash him though in the comments if you don't agree. But no, that's a good spot to wrap it up. I mean, I want to know what people think. How far do you think the Nets will go this year? Is Devin Booker the second coming of Jesus Christ? And what else did we talk about on this pod?
They need to stop doing that. Like people, I mean, even like the analysts and stuff need to stop anointing people who they're gonna be. Quit anointing Ben Simmons that he's gonna be LeBron. If he was gonna be LeBron, he would have been LeBron year 2 instead of fucking year 5.
And and let me know if my take on Ben Simmons being a homeless man's Magic Johnson is a correct take or not, because I think that's a good comparison.
Oh, we should never have Magic Johnson anything with Ben Simmons.
That's why he's a homeless man's version. It's like you go.
But he should be just a homeless man.
It's like there's Mountain Dew, and then there's Mountain Lightning, and then there's some off-brand, in Guadalupe, you can find some random, that's what Ben Simmons is to Magic. But let me know in the comments, because are my takes wrong? Are Mike's takes wrong? I don't know. I mean, we're just out here.
Tell me, do I not know basketball? Just tell me. I think I do. I think I know somewhat. You guys are just afraid to hear the truth.
No, go at him. I want to hear the truth. Throw the punch bowl. Throw this punch bowl in his face.
I'm gonna throw my dong right at you.
Oh, chill. Pause, Kevin Durant. Pause. No, this was a good one. I'm looking forward to the next one. We're out here, episode 6.
Oh yeah, and guys, again, like, comment, subscribe, dislike, hell. Tell us how good of a job we're doing or how shitty of a job we're doing.
Streets.